Hello and welcome to the CDW Canada Tech Talks podcast. I'm your host, KJ Burke, and today I'm joined by a couple of my coworkers, Adam Diallo and Amanda Frank. Thanks for joining me today. Today we want to talk a little bit about getting the most out of the technology. So, one of the things we were talking about roller skating. Yep. And what's interesting is, when we think about technology, it's easy to buy the thing. It's easy to go buy the roller skates. It's easy to go procure something. We're all used to that in our day-to-day lives. What becomes more challenging is actually getting the most value out of the thing. So, you were talking about, dance classes and skating, and how do you actually take and learn the processes, learn the skills, make sure your people are skilled. So normally we talk about cutting edge technology. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about how we get the most out of that technology. So I appreciate you guys joining us. Adam, could you maybe tell me a little bit about your background and your history and kind of how you got to being a customer success manager at CDW?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been at CDW for 10 years now. Mm-hmm. I joined really focusing on that pre-sale side of the business, go-to-market strategy, driving customer acquisition. And then I would say customer success chose me. As the market evolved, through those 10 years, I've gotten the pleasure of having a number of different functions and roles within CDW. And about 3 years ago, we started to really embark in this post-sale journey with customers based on the changing market and the changing requirement from our customers.
Yeah, it's a good point, and we're gonna start with that. Yeah. But Amanda, could you maybe talk about yourself and your journey?
Definitely. Thank you. I am excited to be here. Talking about customer success in a forum like this doesn't happen very frequently, so love it. So I've been with CDW now 7 years. Started and support the managed services team. So I've always been part of the services organization here. And like Adam, I've had multiple roles that have kind of led up to being a customer success manager. Started with coordination of onboardings of clients. So again, not quite pre-sales like Adam, but definitely that initial part of the process. And then have worked in service delivery. And as part of the service delivery team, we've morphed into a customer success team at the same timeline as Adam. One thing I'm actually really grateful about is that as CDW Canada was embarking on customer success, we had the opportunity to do it as cloud managed services in Cisco. So it's been really great for, I think, all of us learning as we go.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting to me about customer success is when you kind of come back to that, it's easy to buy things, but it's hard to really get value out of those things. And so, more and more in our industry, I think as complexity has increased, as we've added, security to everything, really getting solutions to work well together is challenging, right? And so, when we think about how the needs of organizations have changed, how have those needs and the change there sort of created this space of customer success that you've stepped into?
It was really important to pay attention to the market. Mm-hmm. Customer needs evolved super fast, and then the technology we support itself was changing drastically. Mm-hmm. And then in order to help customers adjust to those changes, it was important to develop frameworks and an engagement process that helped them get faster time to value. So mm-hmm. that fast time to value, crucial. And then the technology itself started to bundle more functionalities, more use cases within one solution. And customers needed to stay abreast on those changes. And that's why, again, to stay secure, to stay nimble, to be scalable, required us to engage customers and coach them and help them navigate the various changes from a more proactive approach. And those were some of the triggers that prompted the genesis of our teams.
Yeah, and it's interesting there because I think you also, you call upon a really interesting point around how certain technologies grew what they were. So especially when you think about large holistic technologies, like Microsoft or Cisco or VMware, where, mm-hmm. If you think back, Cisco's now pivoting to be a security company, and not that they aren't, but it wasn't a primary focus. And then customers that are leveraging that technology are now having to learn that sort of new world. And so So Amanda, when you think about the needs of customers and the needs of organizations and how they've changed, how has that really changed your role and your focus and created this lane of customer success from a managed services perspective?
Yeah, from a managed services perspective, it's always been a little interesting to see how we evolve from service delivery into customer success, because customer success is traditionally definitely a SaaS or a consumable item. And so it was really figuring out how we look at managed services and how we are maturing our managed services business. And so all of that happened at the same time at CDW. So as we were launching the concept of CS, managed services was making dramatic changes in itself, which allowed us to kind of evolve with our customers to meet those needs. Yeah, everything Adam said though.
Yeah. And so I guess if you look at the customers, you look at organizations, and what are the drivers within the organization that align with the needs for customer success?
What are the drivers? Okay. So I would say in the world we are living right now, right, there's a lot of options out there and there's a lot to choose from. And so when companies and organizations are looking to make that switch in a technology, I think having an understanding about how to utilize that technology, how to measure that technology, how to get your organization to buy into the change and adoption that that technology is going to need it to be successful. I don't think we were looking at it that way without customer success, and you don't have to necessarily have a customer success branch in your company to get the value out of it. But I think it is just a switch in how we've been framing, looking at things. It's no longer just an item that I'm going to purchase and it's going to work and be done with it. Set it and forget it. It definitely needs nourishment and to be effectively grown and utilized. So
yeah,
I'd say it's changed to who we talk to within the customer infrastructure.
Okay.
Because oftentimes the buyer makes the purchase, and if we didn't have customer success, that ongoing engagement isn't as automated. And so now, beyond the buyer, talking to the IT decision makers, talking to the folks that are doing the implementation has made a shift. And what we've seen in my team is sometimes our customer success manager and those stakeholders have the same goal. And their targets and objectives are aligned to the success of that technology. Now, how they got there may have been different without our guidance. And because we're talking to customers on a regular basis, providing coaching and guidance around how to get faster time to value, improved ROI, and then we get to leverage programs to speed that process or really enable the customers around that process. We found that it's helped us build better relationship with the customers, improve relationship across different department that we may have not spoken to. Like my team, some of the team members that come from the pre-sale side now gets to talk to HR. Because within the customer environment, HR is responsible for coworker enablement, training, change management. And so now we get to coach around all that, giving the customer tools or giving that same stakeholder tools to get their job right, to get those KPIs a little quicker than they otherwise would have.
Yeah. So what's interesting there is I think we've sort of changed the conversation from being a point in time to being a continued engagement. And you're right. I think if you look at areas within an organization that have to continually engage and train, upskill, help people learn new tools, I think it's a natural to then align technology as one of the key drivers of needing to learn those new skills and help better manage some of those processes. So I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, I think when I look at one of the challenges as a person that was working within an organization, we would buy the technology, and you're right, sometimes the people that were making the business decision to purchase that, their job was done. Procurement was done. We'd finished the RFP, and now we had a thing, and really then became incumbent upon the technology people, the IT team, to make sure we deployed it and people were using it successfully. But they may not be skilled in helping with that change management, helping with that technology adoption. So I think that's That's a really good point. So when we look at, focusing on customer success after the technology has been deployed, you mentioned HR. Are there any other parts within the organization that you find, really engaging from a customer success, process with you and the team? And what are some of those other parts of the organization that you sort of pull into customer success?
Yeah, I think it is very dependent on what a customer has purchased and what they're trying to get out of the purchase. So as I'm managed services focused, I'm definitely dealing with a lot more IT admins, sysadmins, directors, and then on the flip side of that, if there is like retail clients or clients that are just different segmentations, it's going to open up for us. So from a managed services perspective, we're working with help desks, individuals, help desk leads, service desk on their side. We deal with solution architects on customers' sides. If there's, we're sometimes in partnerships where we're white labeling and reselling something. So then you add that layer of vendor management on top of it. So the customer success manager, the CSM, is definitely wearing a lot of hats. So they're talking with finance, they're talking with vendor management, they're talking with the actual IT users, the IT leads, the strategists. It's kind of a full gamut on the managed services side.
And then when you think about engaging, from a not necessarily managed services perspective, but when your team is engaging in an organization to help, improve adoption of technology, help smooth that change process, you're also working to train some of the internal people so that they can continue those efforts as they go forward. And so how does that sort of come about where, not only are you helping the organization get better adoption and deploy those technologies, but you're also sort of leaving behind a legacy where the organization is going to continue doing that themselves?
Yeah. So in terms of who we work with, it really depends. And how we are operationalizing that is really focusing on the framework. And so it's no longer just one and done. We sit with customers and the stakeholders within their environment and do a bit of a, why did you buy what you bought? And through that conversation, what objectives were you trying to achieve? And then one of the question is, who is accountable for getting X, Y, and Z done? And so as they pull those stakeholders into a conversation, we work on an end-to-end plan in terms of, okay, now envisioning, success planning, then we get to work together on orchestrating that success. From there, we manage and measure. But in orchestrating that success, what I've observed is that we're starting to see different stakeholders from the organization that are atypical from whom we used to work with. So end users, that's, again, from my perspective, fairly new, where now if we take a new technology, we've built a plan, we've deployed it, now we get to deliver end user training around how best to leverage that technology, which is going to drive adoption, utilization, and then makes IT looks really good in terms of, okay, you've given us something, we're using it, and it's delivering the value we all wanted from the technology. I think it allows us to really be engaged across the end-to-end journey with technology.
And so if you look at that, what are some of the barriers that you run into within organizations? So if the ideal state is an organization that does ABC, let's talk about the hurdles you have to get through. Maybe you're dealing with an organization that has not really gone through customer success as a formal process before. What are some of those barriers that you run into?
Number one is when you introduce customer success, they're like, what is that? I bought what I needed to buy, right? So just that change management that we have to go through with customers. And second, legacy, right? Customers have done things a specific way. They've engaged us to buy something. And now the biggest barrier is coaching them or training the market and engaging differently. And sometimes it's customer led. They have more needs. They come to us proactively wanting help. But other times too, it feels like we're selling again, that change management, that new framework of engaging with partners like us. So again, that's par for the course. It's part of growing pains. Again, now you see vendors and partners across the board introducing new functions called customer success. So helping the market and our customers understand what that is. That's been part of the heavy lifting that we've gone through over the last couple of years. Those who now recognize it and are leaned in, they're the one proactive bringing forward all the different stakeholders that we need part of the conversation in order to drive success. So that's been, I think, the heavy lifting. I won't call it barrier. It's part of the education we need to do with the market. And now that we've, created an install base of success, it makes a really strong story that other customers get excited about as we engage them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when you have that, those good examples, those use cases, you say, hey, the customer over here was able to do this. Even internally where you're able to then sort of define some of those roles and then carry that forward, as a process in your organization, I think is really powerful. I know, when we talk about managed services, one of the things about managed services, it's a constant touch point. There's constant lines of communication. I would imagine sometimes it's difficult to get organizations to commit to that regular cadence of communication.
It is, yes.
But when you think about some of the challenges supporting customer success from a managed services perspective, what are some of those challenges?
So similar, it is getting the buy-in from the customer that they understand the value of what customer success is looking to achieve. It is not always about us wanting to sell something. Often that is not the angle we're going at. But as soon as you try to change the conversation from being about your SLA, your service level agreement, did you hit your KPI for response time to mean time to repair, if we try to veer off of those very technology service delivery items, they're like, why am I talking, why are you talking to me about this? And it's like, cool, like let's go down this journey together, because those KPIs are important. We're not trying to override those KPIs in any shape or form, but we want to translate how those KPIs are helping you achieve your business objectives. And so it's really getting the switch flipped of how those KPIs are business objectives, and actually speaking to them in that manner, reporting them in that manner, and presenting something so that the ops manager can now have a different conversation with their own C-levels and their own stakeholders that way. And so it's just getting them bought in. So it's easier on some than others. But
do you find that it excites me when we have a conversation with a customer and they had some of those KPIs already in mind?
Yes.
And through the conversation, because we get to do it with a number of customers, we have templates or plans built out that really helps them with their own business case. So those are some of the, sweet spot that we get to uncover and really.
And it shows our maturity, right? Because we didn't have that 3 years ago, right? So I think customers are seeing, especially long-standing customers, because again, like a managed service business, we're after that renewal, we're after that long relationship. It's helping us build those long relationships and evolve with the client. Again, they have to be bought in to it to be successful. So yeah, definitely for us, it's really the stakeholder. Can we be talking to the right person? So
if those are some of the challenges, if you had to, say, okay, this is my ideal, mindset, the right stakeholders at the table, what does that organizational sort of profile look like, where you walk in the door and they do have some of those ideas and they say, to yourself, this is going to be a really good engagement because the customer's got this and this and this and that. What are the bits and pieces that make up success right from the get-go?
I'll be transparent. In any times when you say the customer has this and this and this and that, especially customers who have technical resources, they have a broader, bigger bench, they tend to think they're self-sufficient.
Okay.
Which is actually a challenge. The ideal profile is the customer that admits that I'm not well equipped to do this on my own. because then they come to the table and we get to build the plan together. We don't have to dismantle or change what they are already built. And then I think getting engaged early is the number one sweet spot, because then we're able to really work together across the envisioning, supporting you in building the business case you need prior to the purchase. Because we are a post-sales adoption expansion team, but really getting engaged even pre-sales is ideal, because then we've built the business case together, we've built the implementation roadmap together, and then we determine, are your SAs, your internal technical resources, going to do the work, or do you need support? And it down to what metrics are we going to call out as priorities? Because across the IT stack, there are so many different things that now technology bundle can do. Let's not boil the ocean. What are your priorities? Which one align best with the objectives you're trying to drive? I think getting engaged early, any organization, regardless of size, SMB, enterprise, that comes to the table with us, build out that plan, and we work together across the end-to-end journey is an ideal profile for me.
Yeah, definitely. It's easier to sort of guide things the earlier in the process. So I like that. And I also think, having the organization view it as a collaboration.
Exactly.
So when they come to the table in a collaborative mindset.
Yeah.
So I guess from a managed services, like how does that change, or is it fairly similar?
No, fairly similar. But I would say the ideal from my perspective is someone who is clear on what their objectives are.
Okay.
So if someone's coming in and they're like, oh, I was told I need to get security. What can you give me in security, right? Like I did this audit and it's telling me I need to strengthen this. What should I do? Should I do A, B, or C? Okay, I'll pick that one. If you don't know why you're picking that technology at the beginning or what you're looking to achieve from it, it's incredibly difficult for it to meet those objectives because you don't know what they are. So for me, it's an organization that is clear on why they're looking for that technology, and then also because you're looking at a managed services lens. It's why are we looking to go to managed services versus do it in house, or are we already with a provider and we're looking for what wasn't successful previously that's making you look at something new. Because again, every organization is different. Every managed service provider is different. It's difficult if it's not clear from the beginning, from both sides, right?
Gotcha. So a bit of it is understanding that there's a gap, and acknowledging the fact that there's a gap. Being willing to collaborate, being willing to really, work with a partner in a partnership, as a methodology. And then I think you're right. Clearly identifying goals and objectives and outputs. And again, a lot of what we're talking about relates to technology, but is really more around the process. It's about the business outcomes. So one of the things we talked about a little bit is frameworks. And so, I think Lair was one of the frameworks we talked about. Could you maybe just, define that for me, help me better understand that?
Definitely. So when we were launching customer success, we were trying to align ourselves globally because there were CS groups within CDW. And so there was a strong recommendation to look at TSIA, who's the Technology Services Industry Association. They do a widespread selection. So there's like managed services, professional services, sales, and customer success is one of their pillars. So they support or go through the Lair model, which is land, adopt, expand, renew. Our focus is on the back half of that. So land is more pre-sales. So although we are adjacent to it and we definitely want to be part of it, we're not the ones leading it or responsible for it. Our focus is on adoption, expansion, and renewal at the end of the day. And then across that, so cloud, Cisco, managed services, all follow that. And then within our groups, we all have our own kind of driving underlaying framework that we utilize. So from managed services perspective, we're pretty clear on the adopt, expand, renew. We have a managed services framework that's just like a life cycle of a managed services customer. However, Dom's team goes one step further with iCare. So I'd let Dom speak about iCare.
So we're all anchored around land, adopt, expand, renew. Land and renew were traditional strength of CDW when it comes to the cloud business. So we really had a strong install base to start from. And so my job initially was to go and make sure they adopt and expand in terms of now that you've leveraged the baseline of what you bought this technology for, what more can you do? And so, and then anchoring around a CDW outcome framework called iCare. iCare stands for driving innovation, cost reduction, agility, risk reduction, and an improved experience. And so that's the framework I anchored on internally in terms of what do I look to drive with customers? iCare. And then when we meet with customers, what are you looking to get out of that technology? Is it innovation? Is it cost reduction? Is it agility? And so it resonated well and helped us prioritize what objectives are we going to align on? What is it that we're trying to do together? And so the cost reduction really resonate. And so as customers use us as an extension of their team, it really drove that cost reduction. The technology itself, I was lucky enough where, cloud really help customers drive innovation. It helps them do things differently. It helps them change their operating system, operating methodology to differentiate from their own competition. So really having, a set of 5 outcomes that we can both drive toward, help us say, what does success look like? It's achieving one of these. And so it's been a fantastic framework. It resonated well with customers. We often say to customers, is it something that you're looking to get out of your technology that's not captured in these 5? And typically the answer is no. So having a strong framework to anchor around has definitely been a value adding to our process for delivering customer success.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we struggle with, especially with building something new or working internally with something new, in adoption is not having ways to define it. And so I think when I look at the various frameworks, one of the things they help organizations do, again, whether it's us working with an organization or that organization working internally, is having a definition for what you're going to focus on, having a way to measure what you're going to be improving upon. If you don't have a way to measure and you don't have a way to prioritize, it's really difficult to be successful, right? So I think having those frameworks to do that is pretty key. When we talk about measurements, I mean, one of the things that we do on the managed services side, I think customers are expecting more and more as they consume services, is really NPS and Net Promoter Score. Can you tell me how services, customer success has really evolved to have a publicly facing scorecard, essentially, in NPS, and how does that change things for you and the team?
Yeah, so the launch of the Net Promoter Score NPS was a interesting one. It's something I did 2021, right when we were really launching CS. It was the first time in Canada that we were actually asking the customers in a very, very structured manner to give us direct feedback. So when we opened those floodgates, we kind of got the gambit of every feedback anyone ever wanted to give CDW about. And so it was very eye-opening for an organization that had been around several years to now all of a sudden be getting this direct feedback from the customer. And one thing I've definitely learned throughout the process is any feedback is good feedback. I actually, as much as I love a strong NPS score, I'm very proud of our NPS score. That's not my driving factor anymore. We're focused on like response rate because if our response rate is low, we're not actually getting a good level of information back from the customers. The other thing I learned is you always kind of have in the back of your mind, like, no one wants to give feedback. If it's good feedback, you'll often get just tons of negative feedback. A lot of individuals, even like the amount of NPS surveys I get from like shopping somewhere or things like that, right? A lot of people don't want to give feedback if it's a good experience. So it's been interesting to see as our response rate has increased, and I had like just a number, like in our first year, we were at like 17% response rate. We're currently holding like a 55% response rate, which is well above like a KPI we'd be tracking against. So we truly do feel like we are getting that voice of the customer. We feed it directly into a continuous improvement program that we have. And again, that feedback isn't just about managed services. So we are taking that feedback. It's opening up conversations internally at CDW. I've personally learned more about product and how that operation works, and like how can a customer success manager, a CSM in managed services, impact that customer experience throughout the entire CDW experience, right? So that was something we weren't necessarily expecting to accomplish from it, and actually being able to report to our clients what those continuous improvements have been has also just been something I don't think we really contemplated when we launched it, right? Like a single customer says a single thing, we still analyze it, review it, give it its due respect, and then look at how we can improve business for everyone, regardless if it was a single incident or something more widespread. So
yeah, I mean, a couple of really interesting things there. Like I've worked within, IT in an organization, and there were definitely times where even inside of an organization, I would have been hesitant to survey and say, hey, what do you think of IT currently? Let alone have it be another organization that's actually doing that. And I think you're right. I think in part we were concerned about some of that feedback, but that highly critical feedback can be what really helps propel us forward too. So I think, as we've gone through this conversation, part of this has been there's having ways to create these measurements, having ways to gather feedback and really scorecard, and then also gives you a baseline to gauge improvement on as well. So
can I just add, Jerry? I can't stress enough, NPS is a small fraction of a whole customer's experience. So one thing, we launched a customer success tool for our teams to use recently, and that tool is actually allowing us to do a more verbose health score for customer base, which isn't just, but NPS is like a small portion of that. It definitely should not dictate everything you could possibly hear about your account. And so I know some of our clients had fears about that. Like, why am I responding to this? Like, what, like, are you bonused off of it? Are you like concerned about where it's going? And it was like, no, like, we truly just want your feedback. So but it's a launch.
And some of the various metrics we have allow us to be voice of the customer internally in terms of what solutions we build, in terms of how do we develop and change the CDW offering to clients. One thing we look at very closely, that's one of our top metrics we measure within customer success, is churn. Right? We look at that very closely, and it's been interesting to see from day one to now, almost 3 years into the customer success journey, how our churn numbers have changed, right? Considering the level of effort or the level of attention and the customer experience clients get from us compared to what they would get in the market. And then we're starting to now differentiate the high touch versus the low touch or tech touch type customers, and developing scalability through that. right? Because one of the number one challenge from customer success practice is scaling the motion across all the customers that could benefit from it. Yeah. So it's been important as we build and mature to differentiate how we go to market and how we engage, but managing churn and being voice of the customer internally to our offer building team, to our delivery consultant, has been one of the asset that then feed into the customer experience, because that continuous improvement continue to differentiate us.
But it's interesting because I could draw a parallel between having a customer success advocate inside of our organization be a representative for the customer. But I could also talk about how inside of an organization, better understanding what the goals and objectives and the outcomes are inside an organization can allow that IT person to also be an advocate for the business within their own IT organization. So it's kind of like having that voice in the room, having that sort of unvarnished feedback, having measurements, having a way to communicate about those is both valuable, in between organizations as well as inside of organizations, for sure. So if you put yourself inside, the organization, the customer's shoes, what are some of the things that you've learned that you wish your customers could understand, or you as the customer would maybe change to better support the adoption of technology?
As the customer.
Yeah, so if you kind of put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, so we launched a tool. And so we are working with a CS representative of that organization. So it is interesting, I think, to to be the customer at that point, and it's how clear are we on what we wanted out of it, right? So I definitely would say we thought we were on top of what we wanted out of this tool. We knew how we were going to use it. We knew how we thought it should all roll out. And I think we were really surprised at the end of the day that we actually don't know what is actually possible with this tool, regardless of how much time we put in as an organization, vetting in a pre-sales process, figuring out the different teams, because it's a global tool. So there was a lot of stakeholders in it. I as a customer, it's taking that time to really develop your own requirement list and prioritizing that, and really understanding why you're putting that metric against that priority, so that when you get to the implementation phase and then you get to the steady state phase, you're satisfied with what you got at the end. Because again, if you're not clear at the front, you're not going to be happy once you're actually utilizing it, and your adoption is going to take a lot longer. Investing in UAT, so user acceptance testing, right? Really understanding that as well will ensure that you're going to be successful when you're actually adopting it with your team, and you understand what the implications of something are, right? You don't necessarily know that, and so it's really learning to know your own requirements, use your voice, and not to be afraid to use your voice, because again, it's a partnership, right? So as a customer, you are 50-50. You want to make sure that your voice is being heard, and if you're not understanding something, to ask the further questions and not just kind of be like, oh, okay, well, if that's out of the box and that's how it should be used, that must work for me, right? That's how I would look at it.
Actually, a really good point. And my thought, as you outlined that really hard question, was letting go. Yeah, because as we engage in customers, and telling them we want them to go through this framework for change management or to drive adoption of their technology, it add step to what they had in mind pre-sales.
Yeah.
Because again, and I'll call out cloud. Cloud vendors are calling their solution out of the box. Really simple. They've simplified things, which is somewhat true. It's changed, it's evolved, it's gotten simpler, but not to a point where we can skip all these change management steps. I think letting go of whatever preconceived notions they have before we engage and try to get them through this customer success plan or planning process is key. And I think that's echoed by your observation as well in terms of when we got engaged to adopt this customer success tool, we've had to let go of our preconceived notion and really trust in the process and go through every step, which took longer, but ultimately I think we got more out of the journey by following the experts' recommendations.
So clearly defining what you want, but not necessarily the process of how to get there.
Exactly.
And working that in a collaborative way. Okay. Yeah. And then when you think about some of the frameworks that we've talked about here, would organizations, especially larger organizations that are more complex, would they be able to deploy those types of frameworks internally and leverage the change management that they offer, do you think?
Absolutely. And I see it today in customers we engage and outline an I Care framework as an example where, hey, based on the technology you have, you could drive innovation, cost reduction, agility. I've seen customers leverage that back to their internal stakeholders and to say, hey, we've purchased this, and here's what we can expect, or here's what you, our internal stakeholders, can expect from it. So absolutely having a framework for customers could be beneficial. For sure.
And a quick follow-up to that then, are there places that people go to get like training? Is there like how have you enabled your team to learn some of the skills that are involved there?
There is a formal and a standard or best practice through TSIA. Okay. So TSIA is one partner facing, but it's also customer facing as well. And it has the industry best practices across different practice areas, as Amanda called out, managed services, PS, and just cloud in general. That's where I go to for best practices insight. And there's more and more industry specific, so customer success specific, seminar, webinars, and my entire team went through the CCSI.
Both of our teams,
Oh, right, customer success training certifications.
Okay.
And there are different levels. You start with level 1 and go through to level 6 in the journey, and it really does help. That's how we've come up with a lot of the processes we've established and launched.
And also vendors. So some vendors have certifications just like they do for other designations. So there are individuals on, I definitely know on my team, and I know our Cisco CS team who have done a vendor CS certifications as well that are very similar framework and guideline to the success coaching that we had our teams go through. And then the other item is there's definitely frameworks customers can apply, but I also just think some of the processes themselves are really great. So that concept of a success plan is, I think everyone could utilize it, and it just allows you to really understand what your objective is, what your goal is, what outcome are you trying to get, what's the measurement and how you're going to measure that. That's just, customer success has put a nice pretty bow on it and called it a success plan. But that's just, I think, good overall, like planning when you're looking to get something new.
Yeah, and then internally, one of the challenges that I always had working within an IT organization was this idea that cost was kind of an external to our decision making, and sometimes it was the final gate you had to go through. So when I think about being able to take experience and agility and innovation and have cost be another metric that's right alongside of those, now I can actually compare all of those, decide what is the most important. Maybe cost optimization is the most important, but I still have those other attributes there, and I'm able to rank those. So I guess, when we think about like our IT organizations that we work with, our customers, what are some of the things that maybe they could take out of customer success from a managed services perspective, and maybe look to apply those internally and treat the organization they serve as a customer?
Yeah. I will go back to the success plan and journey mapping. So journey mapping is something we're starting to launch with customers, and it is quite specific as we're working through the customer. But it's really, what is the expected roadmap for what we're purchasing, and what are those key milestones along the way, and getting the entire buy-in of the multiple stakeholders in advance, and not just the IT, so that you're able to actually follow along the journey over the period of time, and then build the success plan around that journey so that you're actually working towards it. The journey can change, right? Like, it's not in stone. Things pop up, new applications are needed, new requirements come up in the organization, but it's also like, if you have that roadmap and that journey set out, if there's a change in your team members at the organization, which happens in all organizations, if there is a clear journey map that a new manager can come in on and see, oh, this is the journey you're on, this is the path you're on, this is why you're on it. Okay, I have a soft spot for this other vendor, so I would normally come in and try to change the technology to this vendor that I'm familiar with. If there is this roadmap in place, the likelihood that you don't have to pivot quite so hard, I think, would be long-standing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's something they can tangibly see and know that there is a plan in place, versus not flying by the seat of your pants, but like.
So I guess what would be how would you characterize a project plan versus a journey map? Like how are they different?
So I would say the journey map is like your long-term, short-term strategy. The project plan is how you're going to accomplish the milestones along the way to achieve that. Making that similarity, you could maybe ask what's the difference between a program versus a journey map. But again, it's a program or a project is definitely more tangible steps to get from A to B, whereas the roadmap is a strategic initiative that has specifics along the way, but less task oriented.
Yeah, and I would think it would also probably be the journey map would probably be more closely related to the business outcomes and less about the actual.
Exactly.
No, very interesting. I like that, because I think it helps sort of quantify, one of the things we're really trying to do with customer success. I think that's really good. So I guess as we look at, we kind of covered, what the inception of customer success was. We talked a little bit about how that changed the relationship, talked a little bit about how that could be used internally. Where are we going at from here? How do you see, customer success, whether it's internal to an organization, whether it's between organizations? How do you see customer success continuing to evolve over the next little while?
I think we'll start to see a lot more predictability and more AI infusion across the customer success journey.
Okay.
And what that means is more automation. As right now, our motion are human-led, so what we'll call the human touch. I foresee more data analytics, right, driving those engagement and more automation across the journey. And today we've built our customer success motions and framework, and we can adopt every single vendor that requires that adopt, expand, renew motion into our framework. We've gone what I'll call a slower pace of adjusting and bringing in those vendors. But now as we build automation, I can see customer success really expanding across all the solutions that we support with that automation built in.
Yeah.
So some of those limitations where maybe we just can't support
Scale.
as many,
Scale.
all of a sudden some of those barriers get removed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Particularly
It's
now
not how
that
to
we've
scale.
invested in a tool that that automates the journey, right? There is less heavy lifting around thinking, oh, what do I need to do with this customer in month 6, right? The tool
there.
pops that up for us. And so scale through the infusion of AI and the build of these data analytics and automation is what I see as the future of customer success.
Yeah. And from our end, we have been, from a managed services perspective, like it's that customer engagement model, right? So we've been very transactional in our past. And as you're leaning into the processes and leaning into the journey that customer success can bring, we're breaking down those barriers. And I can definitely already see it in some areas, but it's how does an organization treat that customer? It's no longer just like the account team is the account team and they own the relationship. It's CDW's process is going to own the relationship, and it will be a very clean, smooth interaction between the different teams, even from the current CS teams. How do we interact with each other, right? It is very individual, and we've been slowly breaking down barriers of how we can best interact with each other, because I've had the question, why do we need 2 CSMs, right? And it's like, okay, the managed services CSM is very focused on making sure the customer is getting the most out of managed services as well as their technology. But why would you turn down an expert in a technology who's going to show you how to get the most out of both and really collaborate on that? And so just internally, I see that happening rather quickly for us, which
What
is
I'll
nice.
add there too is that orchestration, because customer success is not just across our 2 teams. It's a
everything.
company-wide initiative. And we play orchestrator role in pulling in the deeply technical solution architect to create that infrastructure, the SAO. So really, ultimately, I think that's one of the other pieces too, whereas the customer success manager will do their function, but they do a broader job of bringing in all the stakeholders that add positive value to that engagement.
So we're looking at it's interesting because we finally kind of got back to the technology part of it, right? So we can't escape AI. AI comes up in everything as an automation mechanism. Absolutely, I think that's really good. Also, I think one of the things you alluded to is as more organizations understand the value, you maybe will have greater adoption. And then also with some of our technology partners, with them also establishing customer success teams, it may be more of a 3-legged relationship. The customer, us, and the technology manufacturer are sort of all working together.
And we see that today on our side. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. So I think there's changes. So then I guess when you think about the future state, what kind of excites you about this? I mean, obviously, I think you're making an impact. I think as things get automated, as there's more of an understanding of the value, you'll obviously be able to have a much larger impact. But when you think about like the future of driving, customer success, like what does that mean to you, and what sort of excites you?
The possible limitness of it, like it's so still wide open. Customer success still means something different to every individual that hears the word. And so for me, it's exciting to see it ever evolving and ever changing to what the technology needs, what the business needs, what our needs are, and just being part of that change. Like I love being part of that change and helping discover what that next new item is that we could be doing. So from my perspective, it's that.
I love it when things are changing too.
Right? I love change.
Continue to learn new things.
Yeah.
And then, when you think about, the future, like kind of what excites you about continuing? You talked about adding more technology partners, more customers.
Yeah. So scaling the motions. What I find exciting now, when I wonder if you've shared this experience, when we built out our processes framework, we really did it in a silo. We did it on our own. Well, obviously, we're leveraging CDW US expertise. They've been through the journey longer than us, leveraging some of the best practices through TSIA. But now what I'm seeing is our partners that we work very closely in using the same language that we do and building out their own framework around customer success. And so it's been exciting to see that what we've built out is validated through what we're seeing with partners. And we really have first to market advantage here because we have now seasoned customer success managers who've been doing this for a while with us, who've gone through the journey. And I'm not going to make predictions because I've been wrong around how quickly AI.
It's only going to be on the internet. So,
Exactly. But I think what excites me is the pace of change, but now because we have such a strong install base, we know who we are, what we do, we're sort of mature in customer success. And I expect the next evolution not to require that much heavy lifting from us. So we'll be more nimble and be able to pivot quicker and adopt to the new. And there's so much new.
Yeah.
Right. So it's exciting. I'm learning every day. That's why I say, technology chose me and it's keeping me interested. I haven't needed to pivot to something else because of how quickly it's evolving. So getting deeply entrenched in that and then coaching the market, coaching our customers through how they navigate all the changes and that are coming up.
Yeah, and it definitely is a lot of change. I think you're right. I think especially with the way that we can augment processes and streamline the business. Yeah, I think that's definitely going to drive some heartache, but it's also going to be some fun. And you're right. I got into technology because I like solving problems. So. I really appreciate you guys coming in and kind of talking about customer success. I think, like I said, we talk a lot about technologies, but a lot of times the difference between getting the value out of the technology or not is really understanding how we implement it, how we consume it, how we make sure that it aligns with our business outcomes. And so I think, focusing not just on the thing, but also focusing on how we're going to leverage that, how we're going to, drive the business forward is really important. So thanks for coming in today.
Thank
really
you. This was fun.
I appreciate it. Hopefully it wasn't as nerve-wracking as we thought it was.
No, I can honestly say it was super fun.
So thank you for joining us today. Thanks to Adam and thanks to Amanda for coming in. I've been your host, KJ Burke, for the CDW Canada Tech Talks podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And if you like the episode today, please go ahead and subscribe or leave a rating to drive some attention to the channel. And we'll be back next month with another exciting topic. Really appreciate you joining us for the podcast. And thanks again for our participants.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.